Welcome back to the Big Bout podcast. I'm sorry it's been so long. It was a crazy month. But that's good because it gives us a chance to kind of catch up on a lot of big fights that have happened. And already it looks like through the end of 2019, we've got some big fights coming up to close out the year as well. Joining me is from The Score in Chicago, David Schuster. Welcome, David.
Hello, Johnny. How are you?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm doing almost as good as Errol Spence, coming off a nice win and a good test. Sean Porter, I think, a quality welterweight, and I think gave him a tough fight. Everything went the way that I think everyone expected it to, but I do think that Sean Porter pushed him in a lot of good ways.
Yeah, it was a grueling fight. There's no question about it. I don't know if I'd call it a fight of the year candidate like some of the other experts have already labeled it. It was definitely one of those fights that after round one, and I was actually surprised that Porter came out on his toes. But then after that, he quickly got back into what he does best, which is make a fight like in a phone booth. And he got very, very into Spence's body, which is what he should have been doing. And it was a very grueling fight. Both guys did give it their all. I'll give them a lot of credit for both being in tremendous shape to last all 12 rounds and still be throwing punches with meaning at the end of the fight. But there was no question in my mind that Spence was ahead very late in the fight, and when he knocked him down in the 11th round, that cinched it.
Yeah, and I think, too, I hear what you're saying about that. I wouldn't immediately say it was fight of the year, but I do think that Errol Spence, coming off his Mikey Garcia win as well, has had a nice 2019, and I think two top opponents handled them well, and I mean, so at least a good candidate for fighter of the year at the very least, as far as that goes. And yeah, I think Sean Porter, was giving him tough angles and staying aggressive, and giving him all he could handle. I think based on unfortunately the inability of Al Heyman to work with other promoters, we're getting the best that we will see of Errol Spence, and at least he's providing him with top competition.
Well, you almost feel bad for Bud Crawford because I think he's on par with Errol Spence, and that is obviously not only the best fight in the welterweight division to look at, hopefully somewhere down the road, but maybe the best fight overall in all of boxing.
Sure.
Because those are both undefeated champions who really fight at a level, I think, above everybody else in their division. But, Spence has got a bunch of fights that he could fight, whether it's Manny Pacquiao, where he can move up against Julian Williams,
yep,
where he can fight Danny Garcia.
Yep.
I mean, everybody in Al Heyman's stable, he can fight. Crawford, on the other hand, with Top Rank, he's very limited in who he can fight. So you feel bad, but these guys make whatever decisions they make, to be in whatever with whatever promoter, and sometimes it works, and sometimes maybe it doesn't.
Well, and it sounds like Danny Garcia is already slated for Spence's next fight, January 25th, on Fox pay-per-view. So that's pretty amazing. That, I mean, my God, I'm sure the bruises haven't healed yet, but yeah, that he's already got his next fight lined up. That's pretty amazing. I want to go back and talk about a couple fights that we obviously saw but didn't talk about and stuff. And of course, one of them being Tyson Fury and Otto Wallin. I think a much more surprising fight than people expected. I have to be honest. I couldn't help but feel that if it were any other fighter and it wasn't Top Rank's house heavyweight, that the fight might have been stopped a lot earlier because it was a legitimate punch that opened up those two cuts over Tyson Fury's left eye. But I give Fury a lot of credit. I mean, he was pushed by this guy, and I think gave 12 hard rounds, and I mean clearly won. But again, I mean, was really kind of fighting for his life because of that bad cut.
100% in agreement in everything you just said. Yeah, he was certainly pushed. Give him a lot of credit for overcoming. It's not so easy when blood is streaming down your face and it's getting into your eye.
Absolutely.
And you're able to overcome that. So, yeah, a lot of credit for that. And you're right. Only because he was the ESPN house fighter and there's so much money to be made down the road, I think the doctors sort of overlooked what was a really nasty cut. Now, conversely, in this fight on the undercard, sort of on the undercard of what we just saw with Spence the other night, Durrell also had pretty much the same cut, over his over his eyelid, and it was really the same place, and he was gushing blood also. They finally did stop that fight, although really the corner stopped the fight. But I think the judges and the doctor at ringside would have called the fight very shortly also. So, yeah, you're 100% correct. I think because so much is at stake with Fury that they let that one go.
It was weird, too, staying on the Fury fight, that it was ESPN that informed Fury's corner that it was from a punch and not a butt or anything like that. It kind of bothered me, frankly, that first of all, I really hate when a trainer is being interviewed during a fight. I don't find it helpful. I don't think the trainer is going to really reveal anything there. It's one of these TV affectations that's happened in the last couple decades that I'm like, will you guys shut up and let the guy, watch his fighter? Obviously it kind of is like a sideline moment with a coach, maybe between quarters or between halves, but it's like, these guys only have so much time, and then really, especially during the round, I just don't find it helpful. It was helpful, I think, in Fury's Camp's case, but it's interesting that, there's been speculation of is that ESPN's role to inform the fighter. It reminded me of back when the Ali-Ernie Shavers fight was broadcast on NBC, and literally somebody stuck in a TV set into the Garden and was telling, because they were posting the round results after every round. It was it never happened again that the judges were submitting their rounds to the network. And so obviously the network after each round was saying, well, this is where the judges have it. And it got back. I mean, there was somebody in the audience with TV, and word got to Ali's corner, and they kind of let him know when Shavers was having the better of Ali and stuff, and like, hey, you better step it up, man, because the judges have you losing. Interesting stuff.
Actually, I think there was a fight within the last few years, and forgive me, I can't remember what it was, where they did have open scoring, and you really knew who was winning. And I didn't like that as a spectator, as a fan. I hate to admit it. Sometimes, some of the judging is horrendous, as we both well know. Maybe even fixed. Who knows about that? But I don't like it when I know, okay, well, unless this guy absolutely has a knockout, well, he's down 98-94 going into the last round. He's got no chance of winning the fight. So I don't like the open scoring system, even though some people think that's the way it should go. I'm actually not one of those. But you're also right about the fact that I think boxing in this instance is trying to emulate both basketball, as you mentioned, and also baseball when they interview the manager sometimes after the second or third inning. And I don't like it also. I don't like hearing from as he's trying to watch his fighter, and it hasn't happened to the best of my knowledge yet, John, but I know it's going to happen one of these times. One of these times, either their fighter or the other fighter is going to get knocked on his ass, and what are they going to say, in the middle of that interview? All of a sudden the trainer's going to go, I got to go.
Of course.
Something like that.
I do believe that has happened. I do believe that has once, it was on probably a mid-card fight on an ESPN card or one of the other networks, but I seem to remember it happening. And yeah, I don't get it. That bothers me. And man, I'll tell you, not to pick on him, but I'm going to say it anyway. Max Kellerman's ESPN show is excruciating to watch. I hate the way he panders to welcome sports fans of all sports. It's like, fuck you. This is a boxing show. Why are you? It dumbs down the sport to me. I think it panders to non-fight fans. They're not watching. Here's a news flash. They're not watching. You're not converting anybody by and also his idiotic final segment, Boxing for the Win, where he compares how the sport did compared to other sports that week. Who the fuck cares? I could care less about any impressive PGA performance compared to that week's fights or college football. And honestly, it makes me miss Dan Rafel's show that was on ESPN Plus for a few months, where it was a much more down and dirty. He did the same things. He had good interviews with promoters and managers and fighters. He had a mailbag that he would answer questions and everything, but without all the bullshit. And I'm sorry. I think Max is just, again, we go back to what we were saying about house fighters. I think he's a propagandist of the worst kind, and it really pisses me off. I watch it because I know there's going to be some sort of news on there. He may have a guest on that occasionally will provide some insight on previewing a fight or reviewing a fight. I do like Andre Ward. I think Andre Ward's a good analyst that has been on that show before. But, man, it is the shittiest weekly boxing show out there. But it's one of the few weekly boxing shows out there. I don't watch PBC show on Fox. So maybe I should start watching that more. But I know they've got their detractors as well.
It's disappointing because I thought Max was pretty darn good on HBO. Much better than some of the other clowns who I thought periodically were part of the broadcast over the years. So if he's, becoming more of a company man, which it certainly sounds like, and I haven't had the pleasure or displeasure of really watching his show so far. I will start watching it going forward. That is disappointing. I'll just say that.
But again, I mean, there's, I'll be honest. I don't get much out of interviews with fighters themselves. I think promoters and managers are a little bit better at kind of pleading their fighters' cases, frankly. I don't know, man. I like I said, I'm still watching like an idiot, so what can I say? Another fight that happened a few weeks ago that we didn't talk about, Vasily Lomachenko's latest fight against Luke Campbell. And it was a tough fight. It was an entertaining fight. And I think only proves more and more that lightweight is the right division for Lomachenko. I don't think he should go any heavier. I don't think he can do it, frankly. And the good news is all these great young up-and-comer contenders are starting to have some big fights. So I do think that there's going to be some good young talent for him to face in the months ahead.
Yeah, not only guys that are currently in his division, but a couple of guys that are underneath his division who will move up eventually. Yeah, he won that fight. There was no question about that. There was no question going into it that he'd win that fight. He's a lot more talented than I thought when they first started touting him. And yeah, he did have that first loss initially, but that was sort of like a quick indoctrination to the pro game.
Absolutely.
where he was basically bullied and pushed around. And if they ever had a rematch, he'd knock that guy out real quickly also, although I think that guy is basically almost out of the game at this point. But yeah, Lomachenko is the real deal. He's different. He also is incredibly in shape, and I know I say that about a lot of fighters, but some guys are just more than others.
Sure.
Lomachenko is just unbelievable. If you follow his training regiment, and there's this one thing that he does, and I think we might have talked about this in the past, where he stays underwater for the better part of 3 minutes, so it helps his breathing, obviously, and certainly in the ring as well. I mean, he is just unbelievable. He really is a talented boxer. I still don't understand. Help me out, John. Why Mikey Garcia? That would be the fight that you'd really want to see. And I just don't understand. I don't even know what Mikey Garcia is doing at this point. He made a lot of money against Errol Spence. Don't get me wrong, but he didn't win 1 minute of that fight at all.
But he might still be under contract with Heyman, and it's that same problem of trying to match Spence and Crawford. I don't know if Mikey Garcia after the loss became a free agent or not, but I would love to see him fight Lomachenko. I think that's true. And also another great fight before the end of the year, December 14th, Richard Comey and Teofimo Lopez. That's going to be an easy candidate that will face Lomachenko. It does like Spence. With the amount of welterweight options he has with PBC, I think Lomachenko has a lot of good options with Top Rank and ESPN at lightweight. So as much as I agree with you, I'd love to see him fight Mikey Garcia. There are good challenges for him. And we've got a great fight coming up this weekend. I don't know how you feel about it, but I think Derevyanchenko and Gennady Golovkin, that's a tough fight. I remember I saw Derevyanchenko push Danny Jacobs to the limit, and they had a very tactical but entertaining fight. Man, I'm sneezing and coughing all over the place. A great fight on HBO right before the end of HBO's run. And I think Derevyanchenko is a very, very solid middleweight opponent for Gennady Golovkin.
Certainly looking forward to it. I haven't seen that much of Derevyanchenko. Obviously, he's a quality opponent, and it should be a good fight. I'm more interested to see how Golovkin fights. I mean, this will be, sure. I think, his second fight under the new trainer, if I'm not mistaken.
I think the third. I want to say the third, but you might be right.
Okay,
you're right.
Or third.
You're right about the trainer. But I do, yeah. But I think because I don't think he dropped him. Did he drop him right away after Abel Sanchez after the loss to Canelo? He might have. So yeah, maybe it is the third fight. But go on.
Okay, second or third. I just want to see how he is. I mean, I think we're both in agreement that he started slowing down in that second fight against Canelo. And obviously he nailed Steve Rolls, but that guy was nothing. So I'm going to be really interested to see how he fights in this upcoming fight. And obviously he wants to win and be impressive. He still wants another crack, as I'd like to see it,
sure,
against Canelo Alvarez also. And then Canelo, we've talked about this also. We all knew that he was eventually going to sign to fight the Crusher.
Sergey Kovalev.
Sergey Kovalev. And so I'm going to be anxious to see that one also. And honestly, even though Kovalev, well, I don't know who's going to be the betting favorite in that one. I'm going to say probably Alvarez will probably be the betting favorite.
I think he'll be the betting favorite, yeah.
Okay. And I think he wins that fight because even though Kovalev has won his last couple of fights and he has regained his title, I think he's susceptible to a fighter like Alvarez, who's going to body punch the you-know-what out of him. So that'll be an interesting fight. There's a lot of good fights upcoming, including some fights in our hometown that are coming up in the next couple of weeks.
That's right. In 2 weeks, Usyk making his heavyweight debut right here in Chicago. But let's talk about Kovalev and Canelo for a second. I'm of two minds on that fight. First of all, obviously, Canelo is the house fighter on that fight, and I think every advantage will be his to outpoint Kovalev. I don't know if he has the punch to hurt Kovalev. He is jumping up 2 weight classes to fight him. I mean, from the start when they were toying with this idea, I wasn't crazy about it because I think it's more of a novelty fight than a real fight. That said, there is something about a bigger, less talented fighter against a small, talented fighter, and a lot of times the bigger guy can win, and just because of his size. And it'll be if Kovalev is able to land punches and is motivated to fight. I don't know where Kovalev's brain is these days. He faced some battery charges, some pretty ugly battery charges regarding his girlfriend, I believe, and that doesn't make me like him as a person. I've always appreciated his lunch pail fighter approach as a boxer. I do think the 2 fights with Andre Ward were life and death and razor close. I mean, the stoppage, obviously, with Ward was clearly in Ward's favor. But I do think Kovalev is at his best, is a dangerous 175-pound fighter. And, all right, here, I'm going to step back in boxing history for a second. When Sugar Ray Robinson faced Joey Maxim for the light heavyweight title. And obviously, Ray Robinson, the best of the best at that time, but a much smaller fighter. Now, they fought outside, and the heat eventually got to Robinson, and he dehydrated and had to stop in the 13th round. And Joey Maxim just plotted his way to this TKO win. Obviously, conditions are going to be different when they fight in December, or November. When is that fight? I'm going to look it up there for a second. Where are you, Canelo? I've got a top 10 list right in front of me, so they should be able to tell me where Canelo is. Yeah, November. I don't know, man. I think Kovalev is in a great position to make the most money in his career for this fight because I think they needed a big matchup name-wise for Alvarez, so this is probably the safest fight, but one of the biggest names they could come up with that isn't Gennady Golovkin. But all that said, I would love to see Canelo, or rather Kovalev, score the upset because, again, I think he's a dangerous opponent. What do you think?
Well, I'm going to guess, and I don't have the statistics in front of me, that more often than not, the bigger fighter who is fighting at his normal weight class will beat the guy who's moving up 2 weight classes. Now, obviously, that was not true of Donnie Lalonde, who had Sugar Ray Leonard
right.
him out. But that was a difference in class of fighter. But we just talked about this one a little while ago when Mikey Garcia moved up 2 weight classes. Errol Spence, like I said, won every minute of that fight. So I'm going to guess more often than not the bigger guy will win if he stays in his weight class and somebody's moving up 2 weight classes, much less, not just 1. That being said, I can see Alvarez actually winning this fight because I think he's still in the prime of his career. I'm going to guess he comes into this fight at about 170, 171. I don't think he's going to go all the way up.
You think Canelo Alvarez is going to actually be that heavy for the fight?
I do, because you got to remember. Well, you got to remember he did fight already at 168,
right?
And so he can get to 168, and I think he weighed 167 or something for that fight. I think he would want to put on a few more pounds for this fight. I don't know what his walking around weight is. I'm going to guess it's probably 190, 195.
Wow,
that's a guess. So I don't think he'll have any problem, getting to 171 for this fight. Now, what are they both going to weigh when they walk into the ring? I mean, Kovalev could weigh 195, and Alvarez will probably weigh like 175. So he'll definitely be the much bigger fighter. In Kovalev's last fight, although he retained, the championship, and he won in his home country of Russia, and he did knock out that guy with a jab. But I'm going to be honest, I kept looking for his right hand to do damage, and it really did. And that's his bread and butter. So I'm not so sure that he's going to be able to, for sure, knock out Alvarez. And Alvarez is the better overall technical boxer. So as of right now, unless I see something different when they both enter the ring that night, I actually think Alvarez is going to win that fight.
I don't know, man. I'll tell you, we just had an anniversary of another fight where a guy was moving up in weight when Tito Trinidad fought Bernard Hopkins. And Trinidad had the advantage of being the much more multifaceted fighter at that point. Hopkins was more defensive-minded than he was in his younger days at middleweight. And Hopkins ended up cracking off a nice knockout over Trinidad. I don't know. I honestly don't know. And again, I'm the first one to complain about Alvarez, but saying that at 51-1-2 with 30 knockouts, obviously the guy's incredibly talented. And Kovalev is going to have to be absolutely at the top of his game in all aspects to beat Alvarez. But I do think it's a more interesting fight than I initially thought it would be. And we'll see. And we've only got a month to wait on that one. Another great November fight coming just a month away, November 7th. Naoya Inoue fighting Nonito Donaire. We've been waiting for this fight at bantamweight. And it's finally going to happen, part of the World Boxing Super Series. That tournament is running out of money, but I'm glad they were able to hang on and still make this fight, because I think it's an excellent 118-pound unification fight. And, Inoue is the favorite, but I don't know, man. Nonito Donaire is an old man. He seems to, be enjoying this second coming of great wins. He's still got a hell of a punch. And I don't think it's going to be an easy night for Inoue.
Kudos to Donaire, one of my all-time favorites, because he always gives you your money's worth for coming back down to the weight classification to try and win this title. And I'm going to, have a rooting interest and hope that he does win this fight. But, the times that I've seen Inoue, he just looks like a monster at 118 pounds. And I just think it would be an upset if Donaire is able to pull this one out. I'll be rooting for him, but I'm not so sure he's going to be able to pull it out.
Understood, man. Inoue's younger. He's 18-0, 16 knockouts. I mean, he's a fantastic Japanese fighter. But yeah, I don't know. I wonder if experience will help Donaire in this matchup. And like you said, October 12th, Usyk is fighting Tyrone Spong, and Tyrone is undefeated. You never know. I mean, like Otto Wallin, we knew nothing about him, and I think in that Tyson Fury fight, Wallin is now a legitimate contender. I think he can walk away from that loss very much an attractive opponent for any of the other heavyweights out there as things shake out when these matchups finally happen and stuff. And I think the same. We'll see what happens with Usyk. I mean, great. Usyk is undefeated. Excellent cruiserweight. Again, a guy who proved himself on those World Boxing Super Series tournaments in unifying the cruiserweight championship. Time to move up. Time to see what he can do at heavyweight. And I do think that Usyk is going to be a very threatening opponent. But first, he's got to get past Tyrone Spong.
Yeah, you know what? A guy fighting for his first time moving up in weight class. He's fighting a guy who is undefeated, who is basically a converted MMA fighter. I don't know. I've never seen Sprong, so I can't tell you anything about him. I'm going to be anxious to see what happens in the ring. But sometimes, talking about Wallin earlier, sometimes you win even when you lose, and I think Sean Porter is another example.
Absolutely.
He won over a lot of people by doing what he did the other night, even though he lost the decision, and it should not have been a split decision. It should have been unanimous.
I agree.
For what that's worth. But, I think he won people over, and he will be active, and he will get a lot more top-notch fighters to fight against him going forward. So
maybe Pacquiao. I would love to see Sean Porter fight Manny Pacquiao, frankly.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, the only thing about Sean Porter is, yeah, he does crowd you. I mean, he's tough as nails. I give him all the credit in the world. Sometimes, this is why I didn't think it was a fight of the year candidate for me, because sometimes when those fights are so close, people can't get leverage on their punches because they're so close to each other. Yes, Spence did knock him down with that left-handed hook because he finally had a little of extension away, as I think, if I remember correctly, Porter was sort of falling backwards, and he made a perfect connection. But, Porter also fights so close to you that you can't normally get the leverage that you want to get some real haymakers. That's the only drawback against Sean Porter, but about as tough as nails. And one other fight I want to talk about, and I know you know this one and you're looking forward to it also, is the rematch between Wilder and Luis King Ortiz.
Sure.
King Kong Ortiz. I would anticipate the same thing happens. Ortiz, God knows how old he is. I mean, he's supposedly 40 going on 41, but he might be 50 going on 50.
You're right. He might very well be. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would anticipate, unless he connects with one on Wilder's chops, and he almost knocked him out the first time around in whatever round that was. I would anticipate the same thing happens this next time go around.
See, but as old as Ortiz is, the fact that he's a southpaw. It's what both Fury and obviously Wilder showed a lot more mettle in a lot of ways in their fight than I think we expected. But I do think the onus is on Wilder to show that he can make it happen again against Ortiz and faster. I don't know. I have yet to. He's going to have to show that he can handle a southpaw. And like you said, I mean, I think, once again, officials helped Wilder survive that knockdown and end up stopping Ortiz. Any other fighter, I think Ortiz would have stopped him and knocked him out. But again, I think he was given a benefit of like an extra 10 seconds or so before the round began, where they kind of manufactured some nonsense in Wilder's corner to kind of extend the break before they got back to fighting again. And I think, it's again, much like Kovalev, it's up to the onus is on Ortiz to be at his best. If he's at his best, can Wilder handle it? He's got the equalizing power that it will always be his dominating factor in every fight that he has. But you can get caught by punches, man. And the right strategy. I've yet to see another fighter challenge Ortiz or Wilder the way Ortiz did, other than Tyson Fury. And with Tyson Fury, it was more a matter of survival. It only makes me anticipate the Fury-Wilder fight that much more. And like I said, man, I was not a Fury fan before that Wilder fight. He had a gift with his first fight afterwards with Tom Schwartz. The Wallin fight has really made me appreciate Fury a lot more. He's got a lot of mettle. I don't think he has a big punch, but I do think that being as big as he is, the counterpunching that he can do when he's at his best, he only seems to be improving with every fight. Now it's Wilder's turn to show that he has improved as well. And I do think that Ortiz is a worthy opponent, and that's going to be an exciting fight, as is the fight coming up with Ruiz and Joshua, the rematch in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I don't know what the mental state of Joshua is now, or what it will be going into that fight that night. I think he's the more talented of the two fighters, and that's not taking anything away from Ruiz, who I told you even before that fight that night. I mean, we both saw him fight the fight previous to Joshua, and I was really impressed. I mean, the guy's got skills.
Well, he can punch, and he does. I don't know if Joshua is the better fighter, frankly, because Ruiz has shown that he is a two-fisted fighter, was able to get up from that hell of a knockdown in the third round and show nothing but offense. And yeah, Joshua wasn't ready for that. So I think the onus is on Joshua to show what kind of skill level he's at. I think Ruiz is the better fighter, technically.
Well, we'll find out. That's the beauty, because we're not sure. I think Joshua is, but again, time will tell. He certainly wasn't that night. And, Sometimes these guys, when they get knocked out, which he did, they have that mental scar at least going forward and into the next fight, of which this is for him, and maybe forever. So we'll just have to wait and see on that one. I got to go back to Fury for a second.
Sure.
Because, again, I got to give him a lot of credit. There was blood streaming down his face, into his eye, and even though he pawed at it, although not as much as I thought he would, he did paw at it, to try and keep it out of his eye. I got to give him a lot of credit. When I get a paper cut, I'm ready, to get stitches and go to the emergency room. And that blood and it was more than one cut. There was a second cut that was
absolutely
opened up.
Yes, there was.
Later on in the fight. So I got to give him a lot of credit. But the fight I am looking forward to, we just talked about this a few seconds ago, is Wilder and Ortiz, because anytime you get guys who are like Ernie Shavers or Ron Lyle or somebody like that, who really, they just rely on those. I mean, for Ortiz, it's the left, and for Wilder, it's the right, and they're going to just try and land that one punch consistently. Someone's going to get knocked out in this rematch, and I can't wait for it. That's the fight I'm really looking forward to again.
I think Ortiz has fast hands. Again, being a southpaw, I don't think Wilder's experienced enough to handle southpaws other than having that axe of a right hand to equalize things. And I think Ortiz, having felt Wilder's power, knows what to anticipate, and I think that will be a factor in the fight as well. I'll tell you, like you said, Ortiz is an old man, but he's a very skillful old man, and he's always impressed me ever since he started getting bigger fights, because he, like Ruiz, is a two-handed fighter and throws combinations and knows how to counterpunch. And I all we see from Wilder is a guy at a tree with his axe trying to chop people down.
Yep.
I think the jury's out. And again, with Joshua, you're right. You can go two ways. I mean, this is the kind of thing that can haunt him, and maybe screw him up for the rest of his career, or he can show championship mettle and adjust and make the necessary adjustments to face Ruiz. Also, one thing about the Fury cut, I don't think it's smart to keep that February date. I don't know if that's enough time to fully heal from those big cuts. Like you said, it is two cuts. I mean, there's that gigantic gash. I remember a guy like Iran Barkley that ever since he had a massive cut, that was like kind of a factor for the rest of his career. So that is the kind of big, deep injury that Fury and his people have to absolutely worry about and make sure it fully heals before he really steps back in the ring again. And again, if they rush to that February fight, I think it's a big mistake.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I think if there's any danger of that cut not being 100%, and who knows, I mean, even in sparring, you're going to find out. I mean, you're going to get hit over that cut even in sparring. If it opens up,
right,
it'll start bleeding all over again. So it's possible they could move that fight. One more thing on the Ortiz-Wilder rematch. These guys actually like each other. It's sort of scary. They're big, two scary dudes. They really do like each other, and they have a common bond because both of them have children who have had some kind of medical problems in their past. So they identify with each other for that reason, among so many others. But you know what? They got to put that nonsense. Well, not nonsense. You got to put that stuff aside when you get into the ring, because it's all business. It is life and death in that ring. So they're going to have to put that aside.
Oh, I think they will. And to be honest with you, I kind of find that refreshing. I hate the bullshit press fight, badass comments and punches that are thrown and just ugliness and stuff like that. It's like, hey, you're athletes. You can compete without hating the other guy. And I think that's fine. And one more thought about Wallin. I was surprised and pleased to see Joey Gamache in his corner. I was always a fan of that junior lightweight champion, Joey Gamache, to the point when they matched him with Arturo Gatti on an Oscar De La Hoya fight card on the undercard, and Gamache was stepping up 2 weight classes to fight Arturo Gatti, and everyone, he got knocked out. He got knocked out badly, and I was one of those reporters, and we were all screaming at Bob Arum, "What the hell are you doing making this match? This is a mismatch of the worst kind. This guy's a pipsqueak next to Arturo Gatti." And it showed. And again, this is why jumping up in weight classes is never, you really got to think about it. You've really got to be an all-time great to be able to compete at that next level. And that's why this Canelo Kovalev fight, as I think about it, is more intriguing than I realized. and I don't think is necessarily the gimme for Kovalev. But it was Wallin obviously credited Gamache, and I'll be very interested to see how that combination of trainer and fighter proceed in the future.
Absolutely. So, yeah, a lot of good fights upcoming over the next couple of months. Very early in the summer, and now we're obviously early into the fall, and I think the rest of the calendar year, Johnny, for you and me and so many others, it's going to be a delight.
Yeah, man, no, we got good fights almost every week, so a good excuse to get back on schedule and report back on what we see in the ring. But as always, David, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Johnny. Appreciate it.